Under a heavy, stormy sky of ancient prejudices, I found myself ensnared in a marriage that defied the rigid blueprints of tradition. My husband's family, steeped in customs as old as a creaking ancestral portrait, never welcomed me with open arms. I had poured my heart into learning their intricate rituals and language, yet every attempt to bridge the cultural chasm was met with icy indifference. Before our engagement, my husband had guarded our secret, well aware that his mother's wrath would have been a tempest unleashed upon our budding love. When he finally asked me to share his life, his mother's response was as theatrical as a stage tragedy. She proclaimed that my arrival would only sow discord and strip away the deep-rooted essence of their heritage. Our wedding, a labyrinth of ritual and compromise, robbed me of my long-cherished dream of a pristine white isle, a sacrifice made in the name of love. Despite the relentless disapproval, I clung to him, knowing he'd once whispered that he'd forsake even his blood to protect us. 3 long years later, after countless whispered prayers and weary doctor visits insisting we be patient, our quiet hope burst into life. I was pregnant, our first child, the long-awaited miracle that would crown his lineage with its inaugural grandchild. For a fleeting moment, even his obstinate mother had been touched by joy. We planned a modest, heartwarming gender celebration, a secret gathering of those dearest to us, where a cake, designed with a playful piñata of colored candies, was destined to unveil our secret. The party unfolded like a delicate dance of anticipation. Bright decorations glimmered under soft lights, and friends showered us with gifts that sang of promise. As my husband and I sliced into the cake, a cascade of blush-hued candies tumbled forth, heralding the arrival of a little girl, a daughter. Amid the chorus of laughter and warm embraces, my husband's gaze snagged on his mother. I saw her face twist into a mask of shock, as if a glacier had suddenly swept over her heart. Before I could question the silence that followed, he quietly led her away into a shadowed corner, leaving the merriment to swirl around us. Minutes later, returning with a gravity that stole the sparkle from the room, he announced that his parents had been compelled to depart due to an urgent matter. My hand trembled in his as he promised to reveal the truth later. In the quiet that followed the party's clamor, I pressed him gently for answers. With reluctance and deep sorrow in his eyes, he confided that his parents, rooted in an era that prized only sons, could not bear the reality that our first grandchild was a girl. Their traditional hearts had even demanded that I be cast aside for failing to deliver a male heir. The absurdity of such words sent a bitter laugh escaping my lips, though my heart pounded in equal parts horror and disbelief. That night, as the echoes of the celebration faded into uneasy silence, my husband's resolve hardened like forged steel. The next day, his parents came unannounced, their presence a tangible reminder of the venom that had long festered in our midst. Seated in our living room like unwelcome relics of a bygone era, his mother's eyes bore into me, a silent accusation that I was to blame. Then, in a voice calm but laced with finality, my husband declared he had important documents to share. He stepped away, leaving me to wonder, were these papers to sever the ties of our union? Instead, when he returned, his smile was bittersweet, and he clarified that these were not divorce decrees but a transfer request, a plan to uproot our lives once the baby arrived. We would sell the house and vanish into a new state, erasing the shadows of a toxic legacy from our lives. The room fell into a stunned hush as his mother's incredulous eyes widened. In a moment that felt both surreal and inevitable, she erupted into a furious tirade, her protests drowned out by his measured command for her and his father to leave before further chaos ensued. I sat there, heart in my throat, overwhelmed by both the cost of our freedom and the fierce pride I felt for the man who had finally broken free of a tyranny steeped in outdated tradition. 2. Confined Hearts and Caregiver Confessions. In a quiet suburban corner, I, just 26, with dreams interlaced with unspoken desires, never imagined that the role of caregiver could unmoor the very foundations of my heart. When my sister's partner was struck by misfortune, a devastating car accident that left him fragile and in need of constant care, I volunteered, believing that duty and friendship were enough to tame the intimacy of shared vulnerability. Days bled into nights as I became his reluctant anchor, juggling freelance work from the solace of my home while nurturing his slow, painful recovery. In the silent hours between medication schedules and whispered confidences, an unexpected tenderness blossomed. Our conversations meandered from trivial observations to soul-bearing admissions, and soon, I realized that the quiet spark had kindled into something far deeper than platonic care. But guilt is a relentless companion. As I sensed his growing apprehension, his whispered insecurities about being a burden, I withdrew into a cautious distance, afraid that a single misstep might shatter the fragile equilibrium we had built. We spent those final recovery weeks in bittersweet silence, each moment tinged with unspoken regret, until the inevitable day came when he was strong enough to reclaim his independence. Then came the message, a tremulous text asking if I had somehow wronged him, if I had allowed my emotions to betray our unspoken pact. Confrontation was as painful as it was necessary. In a raw, unvarnished conversation, we laid our tangled feelings bare. The words we exchanged were neither full of hope nor promise, but were rather an admission that our connection, however profound, was destined only for the shadows of memory. We agreed, with heavy hearts, to limit our moments together, sealing our affection in the vault of what might have been. As fate would cruelly dictate, not long after, he became engaged to someone my own sister adored. My heart, already riddled with secret scars, ached at the irony. When my sister extended an invitation for me to join her bridal party, I hesitated, knowing that my presence might dredge up forbidden echoes. My refusal, gentle yet firm, stoked the flames of familial discord. He later assured me, in carefully chosen words, that his respect for my sister was unwavering, though he acknowledged the complex tapestry of his past, confessions of relationships that defied simple labels, murmured between us in quiet texts. In the end, I resolved to keep these truths hidden, unable to risk exposing a vulnerability that might shatter the delicate balance of our intertwined lives. The critics and confidants around me offered varied counsel. Some urged me to confront the inevitable, to confess the bittersweet secret of my emotional dalliance. Others cautioned that our connection was but a mirror of the old Florence Nightingale syndrome, a natural, if dangerous, byproduct of the closeness between caregiver and patient. They spoke of transference and the inexplicable alchemy of compassion that sometimes crosses forbidden lines. In this moral labyrinth, I was left to wonder, should the heart's hidden stirrings ever be the beacon of truth, or must silence remain the guardian of fragile bonds? 3. Frigid fates and chilled bottles. The holiday season arrived wrapped in a crisp winter chill and the promise of reconciliation, until an unlikely battlefield emerged on the kitchen counter. I, a 20-something host determined to forge new memories with my husband, prepared for a Christmas that was meant to glow with familial warmth. Yet, beneath the twinkling lights and carefully arranged ornaments lurked a tension as palpable as the frosty air outside. My mother's new partner, Tom, a man whose age and impulsive temperament clashed wildly with the gentle cadence of my upbringing, had long been a source of quiet discontent. Our past had been marked by whispered criticisms of his whirlwind courtship with my mother, an alliance that seemed more rash than reason. On this particular day, as I diligently assisted my mother in tidying up, I overlooked a small detail, a few miniature bottles of Pepsi, left out in the open, abandoned on the counter like forgotten treasures. When Tom returned home from work, his eyes fell upon the errant bottles, and his reaction was instantaneous and explosive. His voice, sharp as icicles, cut through the calm as he berated me for daring to serve Pepsi at room temperature, a trivial oversight magnified into an act of sheer incompetence. "You're useless," he thundered, each syllable echoing with derision. Stung by his words and the cold fury in his tone, I withdrew from the chaos, retreating into the silent sanctuary of my own thoughts. Later, with trembling resolve, I sent a message to both my mother and Tom, a clear ultimatum that unless he offered a sincere apology for his demeaning tirade, his presence at our Christmas celebration would be permanently revoked. My mother's reply was a torrent of justification and regret, a litany of paragraphs defending Tom's temper and accusing me of forcing her to choose between loyalty and love. She painted a picture of me as petulant and childish, even sharing images of Scrooge and the Grinch to underscore her point. Yet, as the digital missives accumulated, I stood firm, convinced that no festive gathering should be sullied by the sting of unrepentant cruelty. The commentary from those who witnessed our family strife was unanimous: I was not the villain. Their words rang clear: if even a partner's careless insult over something as trivial as improperly chilled soda could spark such venom, then the onus was on Tom to mend his ways. In their eyes, setting boundaries was an act of self-respect, not of pettiness. As Christmas approached, the prospect of a holiday devoid of toxic presence became a small, yet fiercely guarded beacon of hope. I resolved to celebrate in peace, determined to let the warmth of the season eclipse the bitter chill of past transgressions. After all, sometimes the smallest missteps, a forgotten bottle, a hasty insult, reveal the deepest fractures in our human connections. And so, with resolve as unyielding as winter's frost, I prepared to defend the sanctity of my hearth against the cold echoes of disrespect. Each chapter of our lives, whether marred by ancient prejudices, tangled in forbidden care, or ignited by a single misplaced bottle, reminds us that love, respect, and self-worth must be our guiding stars. And as we stand at the crossroads of tradition and transformation, the question remains, will we dare to step boldly into the light, or remain prisoners of our own past?